Spending time in the Tongass National Forest is good for my soul. Another visitor found inspiration here, and he put his deep feelings for this land into descriptions that are still unmatched. Day after day in the fine weather we enjoyed, we seemed to float in a true fairyland, each succeeding view seeming more and more beautiful, the one we chanced to have before us the most surprisingly beautiful of all. This forest satisfied John Muir's intense interest in nature and geology. He visited the southeast Alaska wilderness 4 times in the late 1800s. Tracing shining ways through fjord and sound, past forests and waterfalls, islands and mountains and far azure headlands, it seems as if surely we must at length reach the very paradise of the poets, the abode of the blessed. Muir's Paradise of the Poets became America's largest national forest by presidential proclamation in 1907. The words Muir used so eloquently 100 years ago still inspires those who visit the Tongass today.
There absolutely is no other place in the world like the Tongass National Forest. It's part of something bigger. It's part of the largest remaining temperate rainforest in the world.
Dr. Richard Nelson lives in Sitka and, like John Muir, has written extensively about the Tongass. He's been Alaska State Writer Laureate. His book, The Island Within, won the John Burroughs Medal for Distinguished Natural History Writing. Another book, Make Prayers to the Raven, was the basis for a 5-part public television series. Nelson also produces a statewide radio program based on the natural world of the Tongass.
The Tongass is probably the largest single intact areas of temperate rainforest that are found anywhere in the world are here. And that alone makes the Tongass a treasure on a world scale. But there are other things as well. Where else on the North American continent can we go and find that everything that has ever been known to live there is still there? That's the truth of the matter in the Tongass National Forest.
The Tongass covers most of southeast Alaska's Inside Passage. It's 500 miles long from Ketchikan to Yakutat and 100 miles wide from Sitka to Juneau. The Tongass includes 2 ice fields covering some 4,500 square miles, 2 national monuments, 19 wilderness areas, 2,000 islands, and 11,000 miles of shoreline. At 17 million acres, the Tongass is America's largest national forest, and 1/3 of it is managed as wilderness.
These old mossy forests here in the Tongass are kind of a paradoxical mix. Sometimes you experience the most extraordinary silence. Then at other times, these forests make a kind of gallery for sound. The beautiful thing about the mix of sound and silence in these forests is the effect that it has on you as a person. It's as if you're absorbing the peace and beauty of the place. It's called the Tongass National Forest, and of course it does have this great ancient forest of trees, but in fact a lot of the Tongass isn't covered with trees at all. Moving around here in the Tongass is a constant reminder of our own ephemerality. We live in oftentimes an obliviousness to the idea of time. And we can come out in the forest and we can move through a place where trees are 500 or 600 or 1,000 years old. Then we go out of the forest and into the fjords. Maybe those rocks are unfathomably old, just beyond my comprehension old. But I can think that I myself am part of a stream of life that goes on for a very long time. And maybe that gives me a different sense of my place and what I can give back to this world that gives so much to me in the way of beauty and richness and sustains my body and my soul. Perhaps rather than focusing on what I take from the world, maybe I should think about what I give back to it.
One of the animals of the Tongass that gives back in a big way is the salmon. Richard Nelson calls them a miracle animal. When they spawn and die in Tongass streams and rivers, their bodies fertilize the water for future generations. Salmon carcasses are also carried into the forest by animals like eagles and bears. Their decaying remains then provide nutrients to the soil.
As it turns out, then those nutrients get drawn up into the trees. So you can find nutrients that come from the bodies of salmon that were acquired someplace 1,000, 2,000 miles out in the ocean in the tops of these trees. And the trees themselves then are critical to nurture the streams in which the salmon grow. So here's this fish that teaches us how ecology works, that teaches us how life works, that shows us that one living thing is never separate from all other living things. It might seem a little bit odd to say this, but one of the great things about the Tongass National Forest is that you're not alone at the top of the food chain. And anywhere you go in the Tongass, there's likely to be an animal that's a lot bigger and a lot stronger and a lot more intimidating than you are. The presence of bears here is a reminder to us that we're not necessarily in charge. And it gives us that vital sense that this is a wild place. And that, I think, tells us perhaps more vividly than anything else what an extraordinary place this is. That we don't have to move through a land left lonely by the disappearance of the great animals, the grizzly bear, the black bear, the moose, the mountain goats. They're not gone. They're still here. They're everywhere around us. We're able here in the Tongass National Forest to touch the American earth as it has always been. There are very few places, any place in America or elsewhere in the world where we can do that. We can move through not only with that sense of everything's here that should be, but with that sense of elation that here we as humans can share a living community with everything, that whatever the great designer of this world intended is still here.
The living community that is the Tongass National Forest has produced remarkable reactions in many who have experienced it firsthand, two of whom are Richard Nelson and John Muir. My favorite John Muir quote comes from his book, My First Summer in the Sierra. Between every two pine trees is a doorway leading to a new way of life. I've found life to be full of doorways. Some are framed by spruce and hemlock rather than pines, and some aren't framed by trees at all. For me, the mountain slopes on either side of the Inside Passage framed my doorway to the Tongass and a new way of life. For the Tongass National Forest, I'm Pete Griffin.